Homeless Pete, I'm telling you, it would be so cool to have more DLCs for New Vegas. Oh, is that Joshua Graham, the Milepays Legate?
Please, Ugly Kid, make a video about turning my DLC into a trilogy plays. Ugly Kid, I'm so fucking cool. It's hard to jerk my shit due to the burns. I often require assistance from Waking Cloud. That bitch Curvy is a motherfucker. Well, in this case, I am the motherfucker, you dig? Sometimes I experiment with Follows Chalk, that cute twink boy. But it'll stick with girls for now. I like drinking their breast milk since I sent the young off. I'd be seeing ya.
That was a bit of a lot of information. Thank you.
From this wasteland they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. For they say you are taking the sunshine that has brightened our road for a while.
Hello, I am Ugly Kid, your host of Based Western Fallout. Have you ever heard of little-known video game Fallout New Vegas? Most likely, if you've clicked on this video. Well, this game is rich with storytelling and complex writing. There's true substance to every line of dialogue.
Take drugs, kill a bear.
That particular line of dialogue is from the second story expansion called Honest Hearts, one of 4 incredibly written DLCs for Fallout New Vegas. Each DLC, aside from Gunrunner's Arsenal and the pre-order bonus packs, offer around a dozen hours of additional gameplay and story. They take you to new world spaces with characters who are rich in depth and complexity.
And we will definitely be spending a lot of time talking about
the bear, then the bull.
Each narrative is tightly woven into each other except for Honest Hearts. In fact, you can completely ignore Honest Hearts when playing through the DLCs and you wouldn't miss out on much, which is unfortunate as it contains a lot of really cool world building and several interesting characters. While it isn't my favorite DLC, it has a lot going for it. Unfortunately, like most parts of New Vegas, Honest Hearts was rushed and couldn't receive all the care and development it was owed. However, this video isn't just about Honest Hearts. I was thinking to myself the other day that it would be cool for New Vegas to have 6 total DLCs. Why, might you ask? Well, because Dead Money, Old World Blues, and Lonesome Road tell a continuous narrative that acts like a trilogy, and Honest Hearts is just kind of on its own. There are some vague connections. Joshua Graham references Ulysses, the Divide, and the Big Mountain, but otherwise it's totally isolated. Whereas the main antagonists of Dead Money and Lonesome Road met each other at the Big MT, the location of Old World Blues. The Sierra Madre, the Big MT, and the Divide are more connected than one would think on their first playthrough. The holograms, ghost people, bomb callers, vending machines, and Pink Cloud were all developed by the scientists at Big Mountain. And the Divide isn't actually connected, but Ulysses had a big impact on the scientists of the think tank and Elijah and Christine. So I was thinking of turning Honest Hearts into a trilogy as well, with interconnected locations and characters. My goal will be to try and keep everything as true to New Vegas style as possible. I'm going to just go over the broad strokes of these theoretical DLCs rather than go over every finer detail, as we could very well be here for hours were I to go that route. So my first thoughts going in would have to be to mirror the other 3 DLCs. The major players all met at one location, then dispersed. You get to visit this major location. Each DLC references each other frequently, and there's almost a common thread on how you start each DLC. Well, to start Dead Money, you get kidnapped. To start Old World Blues, you get kidnapped. And in Lonesome Road, you don't get kidnapped, but it's, intentionally an outlier. It's trying to be different. That's sort of the story for Lonesome Road. But, most importantly, the DLCs focus on the theme of letting go. I'll do this one by one. I'll start with the theoretical 5th DLC and then go into the 6th. It's also important to note that in this timeline, one where Obsidian made 6 story expansions for New Vegas, that Lonesome Road would still be the final release as it acts like an epilogue. But with that out of the way, let's get into the 5th DLC. So, for DLC 5, I'm thinking it would be set in and around the New Canaan area. This location is referenced a billion times in Honest Hearts in the same way Big MT is referenced in other DLCs constantly. It's stated in Honest Hearts that New Canaan was sacked and razed by the White Legs following Ulysses' lead. According to Daniel, there are roughly 30 survivors total, although 2 of them are in Zion. The DLC could see you helping out the remnants of New Canaan who are struggling to rebuild. They've likely had a brief moment of calm, with the White Legs refocusing their efforts to Zion. However, they would have another tribe to worry about. Naturally, this DLC would heavily feature the 80s tribe. They're a faction that's only ever mentioned in Honest Hearts, and they operate out of Utah, so their inclusion just makes sense. They would of course be the bad guy faction. It said the 80s are at war with the White Legs, so they could see eliminating the last of the New Canaanites as an insult to the White Legs' level of competence, finishing the job that the White Legs couldn't. So, the main premise is New Canaan versus the 80s. But then what's the hook? Why is the courier involving they/themself? Well, seeing as how Dead Money and Old World Blues, the first two entries in Chris Avalone's DLC trilogy, started in the same way by you getting kidnapped, then perhaps this DLC 5 could start in the same way Honest Hearts does, a caravan. Although that's a little redundant in this case, no? The Happy Trails Caravan Company haven't heard about New Canaan's destruction, so they set out seeking a trade with New Canaan. Would starting this DLC in the same way even make sense? I mean, just another caravan going to New Canaan? Furthermore, would going to New Canaan to directly witness its destruction render the start of Honest Hearts a huge waste of time? Well, I'll answer the former now and get into later, much later in the video. This could be a different kind of caravan. A Mormon missionary from New Canaan, accompanied by a caravan, winds up in the Bitter Springs refugee camp. Once you get talking to them and learn what they're about, they could request your assistance in dealing with the 80s. You could tell them you'd love to help them out. You could lie to them with the intentions of helping the 80s, or you could tell them to fuck off. Either way, there would be a new passage which opens up in the northeast of the map, just down the road from Bitter Springs. It would be ideal to join the missionaries' caravan to go on to New Canaan, but you could trek it alone if you wish. A good-natured courier would be inclined to help out those in need. A bad-natured courier would be inclined to fuck over those in need. And a neutral courier could be incentivized by a large sum of caps. The Mormon missionary would be very desperate to encourage you to help them out. Now, the main story would be to either help the New Canaanites or help the 80s. In either case, we would need to reinforce the idea of letting go of the past and moving on with the future. Now, this creates kind of a bleak future for the New Canaanites, no? Typically, the titles written by Obsidian have a sort of hopeful ending that inspires people to continue on living. Telling the New Canaanites they should give up and move on would be way too bleak. In this case, we would need to write a compelling character who can't let go of something separate from the idea of New Canaan. I'm not smart enough to do that though, so just pretend I did. And we would need to do the same thing for the 80s. For the 80s, I can at least think of something, even if it's not too grand. Perhaps the leader of the 80s tribe had a personal grudge against somebody from the White Legs, which is what spawned their war against each other. The 80s and White Legs could have once coexisted until something bad happened in their past. Like, the leader of the 80s could have been dumped by the love of his life, who just happened to be a White Leg. An incredibly shallow motivation, but that would be fitting for a raider gang, no? Regardless, nothing I could come up with using only the broad strokes would be compelling. If I sat down and hammered out the finer details, I could maybe work up something more compelling, but that's not the point of this video. Now, I'm starting to worry this is too similar to the story of Honest Hearts. Help the New Canaanites preserve their way of life by repelling an invading tribe from their homeland, so we need to add in a couple nuances to make them feel distinct enough from one another. Perhaps the 80s aren't just trying to finish the job, like I suggested earlier. Instead, they're trying to take over New Canaan for their twisted, secular views. They want to repurpose the ruins of New Canaan and make it a raider town. This might even be a bigger insult to the White Legs. This shows their efficiency in repurposing the place rather than simply razing it to the ground. And the New Canaanites could have no hope of completely rebuilding the location to what it once was. The survivors of New Canaan would be taken in by a splinter faction of the Desert Rangers, those who didn't join up with the NCR. The Desert Rangers are, of course, largely secular themselves, and this would unsettle the remnants of the New Canaanites, as they would have to rely on the Desert Rangers to take back their city. And in this future New Canaan, New Canaan would no longer be Mormon capital, and instead it would just become another town on the map. The New Canaanites would have to reconcile their loss as a prosperous community and be reduced to just another wasteland church. This would be where the letting go comes from. They'll have to let go on the idea of a Mormon capital and learn to live with just being a church. So, instead of fighting off invading tribes from their hometown, the New Canaanites would be grappling with replacing what came before. Nuance achieved. I think this is a strong foundation of the story, and obviously it fits well as being a sequel to the DLC in the same way Old World Blues was the sequel to Dead Money, in my opinion anyways. Of course it needs ironing out, but it's okay so far. But another potential issue with this could be just how far New Canaan is from the Mojave. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't look at a map before writing the script, but I mean, locations in Fallout 1 and 2 are really spread out, so perhaps this isn't too big of a deal. I mean, Lord knows what the Sierra Madre and Big MT are, but I can understand the courier willingly walking 400 miles away from the Mojave on a whim, whilst in the middle of a war, might be entirely nonsensical. We could have this set after the Battle of Hoover Dam. In this timeline, there's post-endgame content, but all the other DLCs are accessible from level 1, so this would not align with Obsidian's style. I'm not gonna lie, the whole premise for this DLC might be fucked. Well, aside from that, going directly to New Canaan would undermine the start of Honest Hearts, as the Happy Trails Caravan Company believe they'll be going off to a functioning New Canaan. But I believe this could be easily rectified. With the resolution of this theoretical 5th DLC, you would have rebuilt New Canaan in one way or another, whether it be the 80s or the New Canaanites/Desert Rangers. But in this case, the Happy Trails Caravan Company would be correct in their assumption of going to visit a functioning New Canaan. Therefore, no plot holes. The White Legs would still jump their asses regardless. So the only issue really would be the distance. Then again, Zion Valley, this setting of Honest Hearts, is pretty far out. Perhaps this trilogy of DLCs could be the Traveling Trilogy, or we could even just go with Daniel's New Canaan isn't a place, it's a people ideology, and have New Canaanites operating somewhere closer to the Mojave. That would also undermine the idea of traveling to New Canaan with the Happy Trails Caravan Company. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking things. Regardless, let's move on to DLC 6. Now, this is where I really got to put on my thinking cap. The previous DLC was easy to come up with because I used pretty much everything that was mentioned but not shown already. Except Bill Calhoun! He's a really important character in the lore of Fallout New Vegas, but we never get to meet him, and he's only ever mentioned in one line of dialogue. If you ask Joshua Graham about his opinion on Caesar's Legion, he goes on to detail Edward Salo's transition into Kaiser. So before he was Kaiser, Edward was in the Followers of the Apocalypse. He and another follower, Bill Calhoun, went to the Grand Canyon to study tribal linguistics, and along the way they picked up Graham and all three met the Blackfoot tribe together. Then Graham angered the tribe, and Edward managed to talk his way out of the situation by militarizing the Blackfoot against a rival tribe, thus starting Caesar's Legion, whatever the fuck. Graham becomes Kaiser's right-hand man, whereas Bill was sent back to the followers to tell them to leave the Legion alone. And that's all we know about Bill Calhoun, except his face is on a Legion coin. Now, I think it would be fitting for Bill Calhoun to be the center of this DLC. It would mirror the other DLC trilogy written by Chris Avellone, two grandish DLCs that build up to a third, more personal DLC. And think, Dead Money and Old World Blues are DLCs about science. Honest Hearts and my proposed 5th DLC would be about tribes, which would mean Lonesome Road in the 6th DLC would be personal stories. So how would this work? Bill Calhoun is kind of a blank slate, which is perfect for us, as we can fill in the gaps with whatever we want. All we know is he works for the Followers of the Apocalypse, and he inadvertently helped to create Caesar's Legion. It would be safe to assume he would be anti-Legion, as most followers seem to be. Well, I have a really good hook to start off this DLC. Somebody in the Followers hires you as a courier to deliver this message to him. Fitting that you're hired to be a courier? So this person in the Followers would be worried about Bill. The people of the NCR could have exiled him from society for playing a role in creating the Legion. And then this follower who hires you for the courier job would have once been friends with Bill, and they haven't heard from Bill in a long while, and they want to make sure he's doing okay. So we have the hook, but what could the story itself actually be about? Well, during the development of Fallout 2, there were several proposed plot lines. Before settling on the Enclave, they also proposed a Brotherhood of Steel mobile crawler and an elusive location known as TV Town. Now, either of these locations could make for an interesting story in their own right. However, I think TV Town would be the most appropriate location for this DLC. We don't rightly know where this would have been located. As such, I will just choose Northern Nevada, just outside the Mojave. He said that TV Town is a location created by a supercomputer, is populated by androids, and is themed around 50s, 60s TV shows. Supposedly, all the surrounding towns would have wanted a piece of its technology. Now, some folks over on No Mutants Allowed thinks this sounds far too silly. However, those same folk hate Old World Blues for being silly. And honestly, while I agree with most people on there about most things, this is one time where I don't. But anyways, where does Bill fit into all this? Well, once you've spoken to the follower in the old Mormon fort about Bill's letter, whether or not you accept the job, you would be alerted to a passage in the northeastern corner of the map. In the base game, there's a puddle and a pileup of wrecked cars, but with this DLC, the puddle would be paved over and there'd be an opening between the cars you can access to travel to this new world space. You would travel to this new world location once known as Indian Springs. It's just a little ways north of Mount Charleston, or as you would know it, Jacobstown. It's a small settlement with just a couple folk there. Here, Bill Calhoun was hiding away from society. He was struggling to grapple with the fact that he helped create the Legion. He kept hearing about all the awful things they've done, so he did the only thing he thought reasonable. He attempted to break into the nearby TV town to convince the super AI to share his technologies with the world. Now he's missing. So, when you arrive at Indian Springs and ask around for Bill, the people start to get a bit shady. However, there are some people in the settlement looking to break into TV Town for various reasons. Most of all, the mayor, who's organized a little militia. They were one man short for their operation, and here you are. And it's implied that many nearby settlements are also planning on breaking in or have already attempted and failed. So, the first act of the story would see you trying to break into TV Town, and most likely everyone in your party would be eliminated. Then, once in, you'd have to find Bill, but here's the thing. He's been killed. However, his personality and memories are uploaded to one of the many android citizens. This would apply to all of your heist crew who died on the way in. From here, you could deliver Bill's letter to the android, and the game would ask you questions about mortality. Is this android Bill, or is it just a robot that thinks it's Bill? There would be vague and somewhat conflicting information on whether or not the androids are sentient. Either way, you could try to convince the android to let go of Bill's past and his role in creating Caesar's Legion, or even convince it that it isn't Bill in the first place, so it shouldn't worry. Then, Bill could become a potential companion for the duration of the DLC, whether you're a smooth talker or an expert hacker, or you could just totally ignore the courier job and completely never speak to Bill. So, with the courier job done or ignored, your next goal is one of several things. Get out, destroy the central AI of TV Town, or convince the AI to open its walls and share its technologies with the world. Of course, there would be several ways to go about each one of these three options. I'm not going to get into specifics in this video. In fact, I've probably gotten into too many specifics for this video than what I originally intended, but the main gist is the AI is so consumed by 50s, 60s sitcoms that it refuses to live in the present, and you'd have to find a way around this. A good ending involves making the AI let go of its past. So, this DLC sounds really cool to me personally, but many people might not enjoy the idea of going to TV Town as they feel it's far too silly. However, those people can lick it and jerk it. Although, glaringly, it feels very disconnected from the previous DLC and Honest Hearts. The only connection is Bill Calhoun, so we could perhaps remedy this in a few ways. A very basic way would be by having some tribals have had their personality uploaded to TV Town androids. A more significant way would be one of your heist crew would be a Legion Frumentari sent to spy on Bill Calhoun. Whilst Bill isn't a part of the Legion, Kaiser would want to know what he's up to. Perhaps this Frumentari could be a potential companion for the duration of the DLC. And this mirrors how the Frumentari were sent to scout/spy on Graham, who also helped found the Legion in the same way Bill did. Not in the exact same way Bill did, but you know what I mean. Frumentari could have even once scouted Zion looking for Graham, this specific Frumentari. And hell, have more Desert Rangers who refuse to join the NCR take up shop in Indian Springs, and some more of the 80s are in this region too. This connects it directly to DLC 5. All in all, I think this works. Now, in the intro to this video, I initially wanted the main players of each expansion to have met at one location, like how Ulysses and Elijah met at Big MT. But I dropped that. Oopsies. Oops. Now, this would need to have changes to Honest Hearts as well. If Obsidian had planned to make these DLCs during development, then they would have had some mentions of them in Honest Hearts, in much the same way Ulysses and Elijah refer to the Big MT and the Divide. So what changes would be made to Honest Hearts? Well, first off, you could ask Graham about Bill Calhoun further, instead of just having one mention. Then he could mention the specific Frumentari you would end up meeting in Indian Springs. Graham and Dan would both refer to the surviving New Canaanites struggling to rebuild due to the 80s, and they would have to have some dialogue about the Desert Ranger Splinter faction. I believe other changes should be made to Honest Hearts aside from referencing the other DLCs. Josh Sawyer was quoted as saying something along the lines of, "We wanted you to be able to join the White Legs, but we ran out of time. So adding an alternative route to Honest Hearts where you work for the White Legs could do. Perhaps Kaiser himself could enlist a Legion-aligned courier to kill the New Canaanites in Zion. And additionally, Kaiser and other members of the Legion would need dialogue about Zion and Bill Calhoun. In fact, this goes into something I'd like to change about all the DLCs. There should be tons of dialogue crossover. Like, after Dead Money, you can tell Veronica that you ran into Elijah. You should also be able to tell her about Christine. And maybe during your quest, I Could Make You Care, where you need to find new technologies to show the Brotherhood, you could refer to things found at the Sierra Madre or Big MT or even TV Town. And many DLC followers should be able to follow you into the Mojave depending on your choices, such as Dog/God and Follows Chalk. And many more things that cross over from the DLCs into the base game. But please tell me what you guys think about my theoretical 5th and 6th story expansions for New Vegas. Are they awesome or horrible? Would you want me to make more in-depth videos for either? What would you do instead? Anyways, I'm Ugly Kid. This was Base Western Fallout. See ya. Please fuck me. Please fuck me.